Incredible moment, single dad janitor's shocking warning unleashes transformative action from CEO. Jake pushed his cart through the sleek corridors of the tech headquarters, the bright lights gleaming off the polished floors. Each swipe of his mop felt like a reminder of his status as single dad navigating the struggles of a broken economy while fear coursed through him. Memories of Tommy's concerned face lingered as he emptied the trash bins. How could he provide a better life for his son when the world around them felt so oppressive? Day after day, Jake worked tirelessly under the cover of darkness, invisible to executives gliding past him. They moved in their tailored suits, absorbed in their high-stakes deals while he scrubbed the evidence of their successes off the floors. As he dusted the CEO's office one quiet evening, he caught a glimpse of troubling documents left carelessly on the desk. A dull ache settled in his stomach as he scanned the words. They described exploitative practices aimed at squeezing money from employees, all wrapped in corporate jargon. His heart raced. He should report it. These practices were wrong. But fear gripped him. He needed this job. Jake hesitated. What would happen to Tommy? Would he be the one left undervalued and voiceless? The disparity between him and those in power nagged at him like a hot ember, pushing him to consider whether he could let this go, to be a good employee and turn a blind eye. It wasn't just a company, it was his livelihood, their survival. Before he could spiral deeper, an idea struck like a lightning bolt. What if he sent a warning? He grabbed a notepad, scribbling down his thoughts. "You're not just hurting business, you're hurting people," he wrote, the ink smudged with the urgency of his unsteady hand. He slipped the note into an envelope, sealing his fears inside as he left it on the CEO's desk, abandoning the very anonymity that had become his identity. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Days passed, and whispers of change echoed through the office walls. Jake's chest tightened, anxiety swirling like a storm within him. What if the CEO discovered the source of the note? Would it bring a reckoning, or would it shatter him? Meanwhile, tension brewed at home as Tommy faced the bullies who mocked his hand-me-down clothes. Each confession from his son cracked open Jake's heart. He felt the pressure of two worlds collapsing on him, the desire to defend his son coupled with the instinct to shield himself from potential repercussions. As the investigation unfolded, a sense of dread and desperate hope intertwined. But the truth of his revelation weighed heavy on his shoulders. He had taken the leap into uncertainty, guided by conviction, but now those convictions were at odds with his safety. What might it cost him when the CEO wanted answers? Would standing for what was right put everything he loved in jeopardy? Jake gripped the edges of his cart, muscles taut, heart racing as the confrontation loomed nearer. Would he have the courage to walk into that CEO's office and face whatever lay ahead? Jake stood still near the elevator doors, feeling the vibrations of the office above him pulse like a warning bell. The familiar sounds of chatter and footsteps drifted down, but he felt separated from it all, an imposter in a world that thrived on competency and confidence, two traits he sometimes doubted he possessed. His heart raced, each beat echoing the message of that note he had left behind. "You're not just hurting business, you're hurting people." The simple statement haunted him, growing heavier with each passing day. As he mopped the floors, his thoughts wandered to his son. He imagined Tommy's eyes scanning the cafeteria for friends, hoping for a moment of normalcy despite the pain of ridicule. Each swipe of the mop became a moment of reflection, transforming cleaning into a meditation on courage. What was he teaching Tommy by remaining silent? Was he truly a protector, or had he unintentionally become an enabler of the very injustices he contested? The stark contrast of his life began to feel unbearable. He was constantly reminded of the power struggles playing out in this gleaming tech fortress, while he was left to battle his own internal uncertainties. The weight of the decision loomed larger, the act of standing for what he believed was right compelled him, yet the fear of retaliation twisted in his gut. He could be discarded as easily as the trash he collected. Then, one ordinary afternoon, something shifted. He overheard a conversation between two upper-level executives. Their laughter carried an unsettling bluntness, sharing jokes about the workforce reduced to mere numbers, lower margins celebrated over people's livelihoods. Jake clenched his fists around the mop handle, causing it to tremble in response. Why hadn't he taken a firmer stand? This was more than a fleeting thought, it was a clarion call for action. But with each revelation, internal conflict simmered beneath the surface. What if he lost everything? What if his small voice disappeared amidst the cacophony of corporate greed? Each possibility spiraled into a paralyzing fear. It was then that he stumbled on the idea of gathering support. Could he dare to create a network of like-minded employees? A single voice might indeed be fragile, but together, perhaps they could amplify their call for change. His heart beat harder as he realized he could transform his dread into determination. He began to jot down names of coworkers he trusted, individuals who had previously expressed concerns with the company culture, those who felt the burden of the daily grind weighing them down. Each name came with a flicker of hope, igniting something within him that felt foreign yet exhilarating. As the clock ticked closer to the end of the workday, Jake felt a fragment of urgency. This was more than about himself, it was about creating a ripple effect, an uprising against a corporate system that preyed on defenseless workers. Jake's mind raced as he formulated a plan, envisioning an informal meeting in a safe space. Each detail needed to be careful, calculated a way to protect himself while striving for a unified stance. The thought thrilled and terrified him. He felt unanchored. His heart raced with anticipation, a mix of courage and dread swirling within him. It was time to take that leap, to confront not only the CEO but the very structure designed to keep them suppressed. He took a deep breath, steeling himself in both resolve and fear. What he didn't know was how difficult it would be to convince others to join him. The task ahead was immense. Would the others be willing to risk their positions as well? The time had come to face this daunting challenge, and the stakes were higher than he'd ever imagined. Would they stand together, or would they falter? With the doors to the elevator opening, Jake stepped inside, ready to confront the shadows of fear that lingered just above him in the corporate office. The elevator doors slid shut with a quiet finality, sealing Jake in a metal cage that felt both constricting and empowering. As he ascended, the rhythmic hum of machinery echoed in his ears, a steady reminder that he was on his way to a confrontation that could redefine not only his own identity but the very fabric of the culture around him. Tension brewed, the air thick with anticipation and anxiety. Deciding to utilize the time on the way up, he began rehearsing what he would say. Total clarity eluded him amidst a crowded mind of doubts, but he focused on one primary message: their humanity mattered more than profits. With each floor the elevator climbed, he conjured vivid images of the executives laughing carelessly above him while employees suffered in silence. Each moment replayed in his head like the scenes from a long-gone film, emotionally charged and laden with meaning. When the metal doors finally slid open, Jake stepped out, not as the invisible janitor who quietly swept the halls, but as a father and an advocate ready to voice his truth. The noise hit him like a tidal wave of dread and desperation. He caught snippets of conversations, laughter that once made him feel excluded now stung his pride. Yet a new determination filled him. No longer would he merely observe, he would inspire. As he moved through the bustling office, strategizing his approach for the informal gathering he hoped to host, he spotted Clara, a coworker who had remained in his thoughts since he began listing potential allies. She stood at the coffee machine, casually chatting with others, her demeanor warm and inviting. Jake's heart raced. Could she be the one to break the ice? Gathering his nerves, he approached her, a hesitant smile creeping onto his face. "Hey, Clara, do you have a minute?" The faint spark of hope flickered within him. She turned and met his gaze, the curiosity in her eyes visibly piquing his courage. When he explained the idea of creating a support network among workers, her expression shifted from surprise to intrigue. "You're serious?" she asked, her brow furrowing. "Very much so," he replied, forcing confidence into his tone. "We can't wait for change anymore. It's time we act." The conversation flowed easily, her initial surprise melting into a shared passion tinged with urgency. As they continued to talk, he began to peel back his layers of insecurity, revealing the empathy that strengthened his resolve. With every word they exchanged, he could feel the barriers within him beginning to crack, creating space for something new to grow, a belief in collective strength rather than isolated helplessness. Throughout the day, Jake carefully approached others he had considered for his network. He chose every word with care, balancing his fears against his desire to ignite change, creating a resonance that could bridge the disconnect between their individual experiences and a shared goal. The more he spoke, the more he was reminded of the courage he sought to instill in Tommy. Each encounter had transformed his anxiety into purpose, summoning a clarity he had long suppressed. Yet, as the clock inched closer to the proposed meeting time, a flicker of doubt threatened to snuff out his burgeoning resolve. Would anyone actually join him? Or would he be left standing alone, a solitary figure against a corporate machine? Jake's heart pounded in rhythm with an escalating fear of rejection. The tension vibrated within him until he silenced it with a grounding thought: he couldn't control others' choices, but he could control his own actions. What mattered was taking a stand, even if only to demonstrate the courage he wished to impart to his son. Just as he prepared to approach the common area selected for their meeting, a whispered doubt slithered into his mind: what if the executives found out about his call for unity? The stakes felt higher than ever as shadows loomed over his resolve. He hesitated at the threshold of the gathering space, caught between empowerment and paralyzing fear, and then he realized something foundational to his journey: the potential for growth often lies veiled in discomfort. With a steadying breath, he stepped forward, ready to face the reality of this moment, a leap into the unknown possibility of real change. Would those who gathered stand with him, or would he remain unheard, invisible yet again? Despite the weight of uncertainty, he pressed onward, the echoes of voices drawing him closer to the precipice of his choice. At that moment, Jake knew, they were on the brink of something pivotal. Jake stood at the entrance of the common area, battling the roar of uncertainty in his mind. He peered inside, taking in the crowd huddled together, a collage of coworkers ranging from the overzealous team leads to the quiet analysts' faces he had seen many times yet never truly noticed. Suddenly, he felt like an outsider once again, a twinge of vulnerability cutting through his newfound resolve. He had envisioned this moment, the spark of connection, the shared urgency swirling in the air. But now, standing before the assembled group, the weight of his mission clashed against the fear of failure. What if they weren't ready? What if his words fell flat, insignificant against the backdrop of clinking coffee mugs and idle chatter? Just as he pondered retreating back into anonymity, Clara's voice broke through, warm and inviting. "Hey everyone. Jake has something he wants to share with us," she called out, her tone infused with a sincerity that disarmed his doubt. The room gravitated toward him, expectant eyes locking on his. It was a reminder that no matter how much he felt like an imposter, his presence mattered. Slowly, he stepped into the limelight, the hum of his heart syncing with the pulse of the gathering. "Thank you, Clara," he began, his voice steady yet carrying an undercurrent of emotion. "I know this isn't easy to talk about. But I want to address something that's been weighing on my heart for a long time." The words came from somewhere deep within, resonating with his experiences and the invisible burdens many of them carried. "We're a team here, but sometimes it feels more like a hierarchy. It shouldn't be this way. Our well-being matters more than the bottom line." He could see the fidgeting fingers and raised eyebrows in front of him, they were engaged but still circling the discomfort he knew too well. As he pressed on, he heard a voice from the back, laced with skepticism. "So what are you suggesting, Jake? Almost everyone here is just trying to keep their jobs." That familiar voice belonged to Matt, a senior manager, his challenge unmistakably directed at both Jake's aspirations and the loyalty of the crowd. Jake took a deep breath, no longer feeling the flames of fear but the steady heat of determination igniting in his chest. I'm suggesting we create an environment where our concerns matter. Yes, the company seeks profits, but we're not just numbers on a spreadsheet. We need a systematic way to voice our issues and support one another. The initial murmurs of dissent softened, giving way to genuine contemplation. Names and faces came alive in Jake's mind, former employees pushed out, names he knew well enough to recall with ache. He visualized a workplace molded by empathy rather than profit, where workers flourished together. Could this be the moment it all began? Look, he continued, we can either sit here and hope things change or work together to make that change happen. This isn't just for us, it's for our families too. He caught sight of Clara nodding, her smile igniting a flicker of hope. A soft voice interrupted, what about the executives? They'll never listen. A chorus of murmurs erupted, but instead of deterring him, it fueled Jake's resolve. Let us not underestimate our influence. If we present a united front, a well-prepared group advocating for our collective needs, they'll have to listen. We need to approach them with strength, backed by our stories. Clarity struck him then. This was more than a battle, it was a profound revelation of his own capabilities. In that moment, he grasped a critical truth about leadership. It wasn't about holding a title, it was about creating a platform for everyone's voice to resonate. Excitement began to ripple through the crowd, the shared unrest transforming into a sense of agency. But just as a glimmer of hope flickered, he felt the familiar tension return. What if this transformative vision unraveled? What if they faced backlash from the top layers? Jake's eyes scanned the room, landing on Clara's encouraging gaze as she whispered, "You're doing great." He took a step closer, leaning into the fire igniting around him. Let us get together and articulate our needs formally. We can strategize, take our message directly to the executives. But a wave of apprehension washed over him again. Would they really follow him? Would they feel inspired enough not to turn back when hard times loomed? In that moment of hesitation, a nagging thought took root, what if his courage was misplaced? With the spotlight on him, surrounded by the weight of hope and fear, Jake knew he stood on the edge of something monumental. Would he be the catalyst for change, or would he falter, consumed by the shadows of doubt? The room quieted, and as he prepared to dive deeper, words surged through him like an echoing drumbeat. Let us take the leap, together. But was he truly ready to lead them through the treacherous waters that lay ahead? The energy in the room surged, a mix of anticipation and anxiety swirling around Jake as he gazed into the faces before him. This was a moment that could define his career and reshape the workplace culture he had always dreaded. He sensed the fragility of resolve filling the air, as if everyone's future rested on the precarious balance between ambition and fear. Feeling the whirl of emotions, he took a deep breath, grounding himself in his purpose. His heart raced not solely from anxiety, but from a visceral understanding of what he was fighting for. Each pair of eyes reflected a shared yearning and unvoiced acknowledgement that something deeply painful needed to shift. Together, we have the power to create change, he said, his voice resonating through the room. But it begins with trusting each other. It's about voicing our concerns loudly enough that they cannot be ignored. Our stories are our strength. The crowd murmured again, their uncertainty bubbling under the surface. They were afraid to hope, afraid to believe in the possibility of change. Yet Jake dared to imagine it. He recalled every moment of frustration, every stifled voice, and with that memory ignited his conviction. Let us gather tomorrow to brainstorm our needs, he proposed, feeling the cauldron of possibility boiling over. I want you to think about specific issues that matter to you. I'm committed to ensuring our voices are heard. Every story, every experience, matters. He watched as Clara shifted closer, her presence steadying his nerves. Together, they could form a core of leaders, people prepared to catalyze change. She leaned in, her soft voice almost a whisper, "You know, Jake, you have more influence than you realize, you don't need to go through this alone." But inside, his mind raced with self-doubt. The fear of ridicule and backlash shadowed his aspirations. It would be easy to slip back into the role of the silent observer. Yet the need for change was louder than the fear. "Tomorrow, we will come prepared," he reiterated, drawing the conversation back to a place of action. "Let us gather our experiences, our propositions. We're not running a rebellion, we simply want to articulate our needs constructively. If we prepare a good case, they'll listen. They have to." He felt the shift in the atmosphere, the tension giving way to whispered conversations, hesitance slowly transforming into intrigue. Matt's voice broke through again, sharper this time, "But you have no guarantee they will listen or take us seriously." Silencing his initial instinct to backtrack, Jake steeled himself, meeting Matt's eyes. "We can't go in expecting failure. If we believe we'll be dismissed, we will be. But if we show that we're united and prepared, we wield power in our own right. You can help us with your experience. We need your voice as much as anyone else." The notion seemed to ripple through the crowd, evoking responses ranging from hesitant nods to cautious smiles. The skepticism that loomed began to feel like a challenge rather than an obstruction, invigorating him more than he thought possible. Jake realized that this moment of hesitation wasn't merely about others following him, it was also a confrontation with his own insecurities. Was he truly ready to shoulder the burden of leadership? Would he allow his past failures to dictate his present courage? He thought of the difficulty faced when confronting failure and wondering if leading the team through this endeavor would ultimately be just another series of disappointments. Yet something within him clamored that this was an opportunity not merely for his colleagues but also for himself. As the meeting drew to a close, the fragments of conversation rehearsed in his mind, he felt a seed of determination take root. "Let us meet after hours, and let us make it happen," he challenged, feeling a current of anticipation sparkling amongst them. The collective energy surged, igniting aspirations once dormant. Still, as he walked towards the door, Jake carried the weight of lingering doubt. What if in trying to create a platform, he unknowingly built a stage for his downfall? What would become of him and his team when the executives pushed back? The air hung heavy with potential, and as he stepped out of that common area, Jake found himself on the brink, poised between hope and reality. Was he ready to navigate the storm of scrutiny that lay ahead, or would the very movement he birthed turn against him? The following morning, Jake woke up with a pit in his stomach. The urgency of the previous night's meeting echoed in his mind, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he was staring down an enormous precipice. He hadn't slept well, as doubts whispered insidiously through the night. Would he misstep? Would he bring ruin upon himself and his colleagues? Despite the turmoil, Jake pushed through, clinging on to the shared resolve that had started to spark among his colleagues. He dressed deliberately, allowing each choice a navy blue shirt, khakis, sensible shoes to reinforce the seriousness of the task ahead. Today would not merely be about gathering complaints, it would be about shaping narratives, creating a framework that might finally demand attention. He arrived at the meeting space early, the dim light filtering through the blinds served as a reminder that transformations often unfolded quietly. As he arranged the seating into a circle, he remembered the countless times he had avoided facing challenges head-on. This was a different kind of bravery, one that required vulnerability and the acceptance of uncertainty. Clara was the first to arrive. She brought a notebook, its spine cracked a testament to her willingness to gather thoughts and ideas over time. Watching her jot down notes, Jake felt a flicker of gratitude bloom inside him. She had been supportive, her presence was stabilizing. "Ready for this?" she asked, her gaze both humorous and earnest. Jake chuckled nervously, "As ready as I can be." The truth, however, was that he felt the weight of their shared responsibility. The moment they had initiated this dialogue, it had transcended his individual fears, it was now about everyone in that circle. One by one, his colleagues trickled in. With each face that joined them, Jake witnessed the anxiety transform. Conversations blurred together till all he could feel was an electrifying current, ready to burst. It rippled as ideas flowed, absorbed through laughter and occasional trepidation. Matt arrived last, the weight of skepticism still painted on his brow. "I'm not sure what you think this is going to accomplish," he said offhandedly, attempting to pull down the group's rising momentum. Jake felt an instinctual churning in response to Matt's dismissal. Instead of cowering, he lifted his chin slightly. "That's exactly what we're here to figure out, but it starts with our voices being heard. We cannot expect anything if we don't stand for something." The room fell silent, and Jake sensed something crucial standing on the cusp of realization. What if Matt was right? What if their efforts ultimately fell flat? He had to confront that fear head-on or risk letting it dictate the course of their action. Clara spoke up, her voice steady. "We've all felt the frustration. Let us focus on articulating our concerns clearly and constructively. If we present a united front, we can make them listen." Jake didn't realize until that moment how much he craved validation. Their collective commitment seemed to strip him of self-doubt, granting him newfound confidence. He suggested they categorize their thoughts into specific concerns: communication breakdowns, workload imbalances, bullying. As they composed a list, Jake allowed himself to feel proud. This was no longer just about him. Ideas were being exchanged, fears outlined, responsibilities shared. He felt the emergence of something truly collaborative. However, as he glanced around the table witnessing sparks of determination in his colleagues, the fleeting thought returned: what if it wasn't enough? What if they dug their own graves? The nagging question stuck to him, persistent as a shadow. With a deep breath, Jake shared another uneasy thought: if we do this, we also need to prepare for pushback. Executives are rarely receptive to what they don't want to hear. Matt snorted, "And what if they just see us as a bunch of whiners?" Jake locked eyes with him. "Then we have to prove otherwise. It's not just about what we want, it's about what will make this place better for everyone." In that moment, the air shifted. Falter and fear intertwined with burgeoning unity. Jake realized this was the pivotal moment he needed to hone his skills of persuasion and clarity. Each member of the group began sharing personal anecdotes, burdens that weighed them down, igniting a collective fire. Jake felt the viewers shift from being a mere participant to a leading force: transformation demanding action. As the meeting drew its final echoes, they agreed to present their ideas in 2 days. But amid the growing excitement, the weight of the potential fallout loomed ominously. What would happen when their recommendations were tossed aside? Would their courage become a target for ridicule? The final hum of conversation settled into silence, and Jake faced the threshold of a defining moment. The question hung in the air, unanswered and tantalizing: would he possess the resilience to withstand the storm that surely awaited? Jake spent that night tossing and turning, remnants of the day swirling in his mind like autumn leaves caught in a gust. The weight of responsibility felt heavier, pressing down on him as if 1,000 eyes were watching and judging his every decision. The fear of failure gnawed at him, each tick of the clock heightening the urgency. It was more than just the presentation ahead, it was about stepping beyond himself and into the role of a leader, something he had always shied away from. When the morning sun finally broke through, he greeted the day with a determination that masked his inner turmoil. He had resolved to not just participate, but instead make his mark. Each step toward the office felt like a step closer to inevitable confrontation. The earlier idea of categorizing concerns didn't just resonate with his colleagues, it reflected an awakening within himself, a recognition that he could indeed drive change. As he walked into the office, Jake felt the familiar scent of coffee wafting through the air, triggering thoughts of comfort. But that comfort was quickly overshadowed by the reality that lay ahead. The presentation was imminent, and with it came the challenge of confronting not just the executive team but the very culture embedded within the organization. In the conference room, the air felt charged. He seized the moment, scanning the faces of his colleagues as they settled into their seats. Nervousness stung, but it wasn't just his own. They were all in this together, riding the waves of anxiety but also anticipation. "Okay, everyone. It's time," Jake said, forcing confidence into his voice. Clara nodded at him, as if to say, "You've got this." It was time to step into the spotlight he had previously avoided. As he began to speak, he noticed every gaze locked onto him, a reality he had long tried to ignore. His influence mattered. He laid out their collective concerns clearly: the communication breakdowns, the unbearable workloads, the toxic behavior that had long lingered in shadows. The words flowed, steady and deliberate, as he harnessed the lessons learned through their previous discussions. But as he reached the core of their arguments, Jake's confidence wavered. What if everything he was fighting for was met with indifference? An image of Matt's skepticism flickered in his mind. The fear threatened to seep back in, clawing its way toward the surface. At the height of his own anxiety, a sudden voice broke through. One of the executives, a hardened figure with years of authority shading his expressions, leaned forward. "And what proof do you have that these issues exist beyond your complaints?" That question sliced through Jake's confidence. Panic set in, and he felt the weight of vulnerability. But instead of backing away, he paused, and unexpected clarity washed over him. "Because we see it every day. It affects morale, productivity, culture. Our team's potential is being squandered, and until we voice this, we remain powerless." Each word he spoke crystallized into a collective truth. A ripple of murmurs animated the room. For the first time, he realized this was not merely about him presenting a case, it was about igniting the willingness to change. Their shared experiences were not just grievances, they were stories that needed to be told, exposing uncomfortable truths. To his surprise, Clara took the leap and recounted her own story about feeling stifled by an unsupportive environment, and others followed, amplifying their voices. The room shifted as vulnerability became the common ground. But then Matt's dismissive attitude crept back into Jake's thoughts. What if this was just a moment of misplaced hope? The stakes felt high, and the risk of failure loomed larger than it ever had before. As he wrapped up, Jake faced another gauntlet. If we can't convince them to see the value of this shift, we risk everything we've built. Walking away from that meeting left Jake with a mix of exhilaration and dread. He had found strength in vulnerability, but the question remained: what would happen if the executives pushed back, further entrenching the culture they sought to change? The finality of his words echoed in his mind, igniting a new internal struggle. Would he be able to rally his colleagues to face the consequences of their honesty, or would their courage be met with hostility? With each step toward the exit, the anticipation of another crucial day ahead filled him with dread and determination. The time had come to confront not only those in power but his personal limits. Would he step up, or would fear distort the path forward? Jake barely slept that night, the adrenaline from the meeting still coursing through his veins. He had breached the walls of complacency, and now the question weighed heavily on him: what would happen next? He brewed coffee in a daze, each sip swirling thoughts of possibilities, feelings of hope, and the gastronomic unease of doubt swirling together like an intricate dance. Arriving at the office felt surreal, the atmosphere different, charged with that peculiar blend of fear and excitement. The discussions from yesterday still hung in the air, palpable and heavy. His colleagues looked at him with a mix of appreciation and anxiety, each of them perhaps wondering if this moment had indeed catalyzed real change or had only stirred the waters temporarily. As Jake settled at his desk, an email notification lit up his screen. The subject line read, "Follow up on yesterday's meeting." His heart raced. It was from Clara, the guiding voice alongside him. The email expressed gratitude for taking the lead and suggested gathering the team again to discuss their potential next steps. Encouraged by her initiative, Jake felt a flicker of courage ignite within him. The responsibility was no longer just his, it was shared. He promptly gathered a group: Clara, a few team members, and even Matt, who appeared unusually subdued. The meeting room buzzed with hesitant excitement, reverberating with uncertainty but also the promise of something different. Jake took a breath, letting the air of renewal fill him. "Thank you for coming together again. This isn't just about one meeting, it's about creating a sustainable shift in how we work together." They began to brainstorm actionable steps. Ideas flew around the room, each one more daring than the last. Jolts of adrenaline surged as Clara proposed a formal feedback mechanism to report ongoing concerns. Someone suggested a workshop series for conflict resolution based on the cultural issues they had raised. Each contribution felt like adding bricks to a foundation meant to support something far greater than their individual selves. During an enthusiastic exchange, Matt finally spoke up, his voice steady. "I want to support this. I've seen how these issues can crush morale, and I want to help facilitate something that changes that." His admission caught Jake off guard, a reminder that vulnerability travels both ways. By admitting his own flaws, Matt began to solidify their resolve. But within Jake, a nagging doubt persisted. Was this genuine change, or just another cycle of debate with no resolution? The feeling gnawed at him that success hinged not merely on their efforts but rather on how the executives would respond to this emerging grassroots movement. As they concluded the meeting, Jake laid out the next steps for action, urging everyone to harness their collective voices to address the executives once more. They would need to transition from mere complaints to solutions that could be embraced, ideas that could inspire. Jake's enthusiasm was genuine, yet he felt the weight of responsibility pressurize him anew. He was not just a participant in a corporate environment, he was now a catalyst of change. The weeks unfolded with an electrifying pace. Jake spearheaded workshops, led discussions, and fostered an emotional environment where everyone felt safe to express their thoughts. Yet, with each passing day, the anxiety of a potential backlash from management lingered in the back of his mind, a storm cloud on the horizon. What if the executives dismissed their initiatives? What if they were viewed as insurrectionists rather than pioneers? Jake sat in his office, a flood of thoughts crashing over him. The stakes had never felt higher, he was invested in the fabric of their professional lives, but the path forward felt ever more precarious. With each small success came the looming specter of doubt. If the executives suffocated their voices, if they shut down this newfound ambition, what then? It was time for Jake to confront one final hurdle. He had to secure an audience once again with the executive team, this time, equipped not just with grievances but with concrete proposals for a cultural overhaul. Would he walk away empowered to advocate for his colleagues or merely be crushed under the very weight of expectations he wished to change? The next meeting loomed a chance to push the boundaries of their courage or retreat back into comfortable silence. Jake resolved to fight for their vision, knowing this was about more than just a workplace, it was about redefining their very identities. What awaited him on the other side of that closed door? Jake's heart thundered as he prepared for the impending meeting, the air around him stifling with anticipation. This was not just another corporate gathering, it represented a pivotal moment for him and his team. He meticulously organized the proposals, each one carefully crafted to address systemic issues that had long been accepted as the norm. The challenge ahead was monumental, but Jake felt a surge of determination coursing through him. With every tick of the clock, his resolve hardened. He pondered the impact of his words and the ramifications for his colleagues. If we're going to do this, we have to be bold, he thought, the phrase echoing in his mind as he rehearsed his opening lines. The time for half measures had passed, he needed to present a united front as a cohesive team advocating for transformation. As he made his way to the boardroom, doubts flickered like shadows, taunting him. Were they ready for this? Were the executives equipped to embrace the change his team envisioned? Questions danced around him, each one more intrusive than the last. Ultimately, Jake dismissed them with a steely resolve. He could no longer afford to play small. When he entered the boardroom, a noticeable hush fell over the executives. Their expressions ranged from skepticism to curiosity, but Jake was undeterred. He cleared his throat, glancing at Clara, who sat in the front row, her encouraging nod fueling his confidence. "Thank you for meeting with us today," he began, every word carefully measured. "We've spent weeks considering not just what's wrong, but what we can do to make it right. We believe it's time for a cultural overhaul that fosters transparency, collaboration, and innovation." He launched into the proposals, detailing the feedback mechanism and workshops, emphasizing how these initiatives would empower employees and ultimately enhance company performance. Each point resonated, energizing the room while invoking both enthusiasm and apprehension. As he spoke, Jake felt the power of collective intention surging around him. However, just as momentum built, the atmosphere shifted. A senior executive leaned forward, arms crossed, a familiar defensive posture. "You realize change takes time, right? This isn't something we implement overnight," he cautioned, his tone dripping with skepticism. "That's exactly it," Jake replied, surprising even himself with the conviction in his voice. "Change doesn't always come from the top down. Sometimes it starts from voices like ours, who see each day how disengagement stifles creativity and growth. We have the opportunity to pioneer our destiny, to make this company a place where innovation thrives." In that moment, Jake recognized something profound within himself. He was no longer just a participant in this corporate arena, he was a leader, an advocate. The fear that had gripped him began to evaporate, replaced by a clarity of purpose. But uncertainty lingered like an unwelcome guest, lurking beneath the surface of his ambition. As the executive team engaged, questions arose about implementation, timeframes, and resources. Each inquiry felt another hurdle, but Jake embraced them, viewing them as steps toward understanding and acceptance rather than resistance. He urged them to see the merit in building a culture where employees felt valued and heard. As the meeting slowed, a fleeting moment of silence took hold. It was as if the room itself held its breath, waiting for an answer to an unspoken question: would they endorse this radical shift, or push it back into obscurity? Jake sensed the critical juncture looming ahead. If he succeeded in convincing the executives now, he would not only solidify his position as a leader but also reshape the future of his team. But beneath his growing confidence, doubt crept in. There remained a haunting fear of the consequences should the executives reject their initiatives, a chilling reminder that resistance could come wrapped in the guise of practicality. As he concluded, Jake's gaze swept across the executives. He could feel an electric tension building. An openness to change mingled with caution. He had ignited a conversation, but the outcome was still unclear. The moment of truth arrived when one executive finally spoke. "Very well, let us discuss this further, but understand, ideas without actionable plans will not carry weight." Jake braced himself. This was not merely a disagreement, it was a directive, an invitation to prove his worth. Would he rise to the occasion, ready to navigate the complexities ahead, or would he falter under the pressure of expectations? With his colleagues' hopes hanging in the balance, Jake prepared for the most significant challenge of his career, not just to propose changes but to persuade the very heart of the corporation to embrace them and act. As he sat back down, the storm inside him raged anew. This was only the beginning, and he needed to ensure they didn't lose momentum. What strategies could he employ to win over the skeptics and ensure this wasn't just another empty promise? The clock was ticking, and the next steps had to be game-changing. The rain fell steadily as Jake stood in front of his small apartment, the sound creating a rhythmic backdrop to his thoughts. He had crossed a threshold, one that turned him from an invisible janitor to a respected advocate for change. Now, it was time to face the aftermath of all his efforts. Despite the uncertainties of the corporate dynamics above him, he felt grounded, propelled forward by the promise of hope that had blossomed within him and his colleagues. In the weeks following the pivotal meeting, Jake worked relentlessly to implement the proposed changes. The executives had responded favorably, albeit cautiously. They had opened a dialogue, a gradual shift from indifference to engagement. The real victory lay in how the team rallied behind him. Each workshop sparked vibrant discussions, unearthing unspoken grievances and fostering camaraderie among divided departments. Amid this collaborative atmosphere, Jake discovered a sense of belonging he had long craved. The tangible transformation was apparent, with employees coming together, sharing their stories, and advocating for their needs. Clara had become a cornerstone of these efforts, her unwavering support and insight guiding the team as they crafted an actionable framework for long-term improvement. It was as if the foundations of the old, rigid structure began to crack, allowing new vision and possibilities to seep in. As they approached their quarterly review, murmurs of excitement filled the air. Jake stood before the assembled employees, confidence surging within him. It was no longer just about presenting ideas, it was about showcasing their collective progress and embodiment of their united strength. Leaning against the podium, he spoke, his voice resonating with purpose. We have come together not just to voice our concerns but to change the environment that surrounds us. Today marks a new chapter. Jake outlined the measurable successes they had achieved: the introduction of structured feedback channels, the plethora of workshops that led to higher engagement scores, and the measurable decrease in workplace grievances. His colleagues, visibly invigorated, exchanged proud glances, affirming the transformation they had navigated together. However, the real test awaited him at the end of the presentation. Smiling executives were engaged, but would they follow through with continued support? The room fell silent as the senior executive leaned in, articulating a thought that cut through the anticipation like a knife. This is all well and good, but change takes time. How can we ensure this isn't just a phase? In that moment, Jake could feel the weight of expectation pressing upon him, the scrutiny both frightening and pivotal. He took a deep breath, bracing for the pivotal moment, infusing his tone with a calm conviction. Change does take time, and it requires commitment from all of us. We're not simply asking for policies but a genuine cultural shift. If we can secure ongoing dialogue and embrace transparency, we can create an environment that thrives rather than survives. As he spoke, he witnessed understanding ripple amongst the executives, a flicker of recognition rather than disbelief. And then, unexpectedly, they asked for feedback on expanding their initiatives, recognizing the momentum was real, that actions taken would need constant nurturing. Jake felt the elation rise within him. This was his moment of transformation. Finally, the meeting concluded, and Jake stepped out, enveloped in the belief that he had not only represented his colleagues but had evolved into an effective leader. He had conquered the crippling fear that once clouded his path, embracing responsibility and courage. He was equipped with not only the capability to influence others but had also proven that his voice mattered, even as a single father, a janitor, pushing for justice in the corporate world. Walking into his apartment later that evening, he was met by Tommy, who looked up with wide eyes. "Dad, how did it go?" With a smile, Jake ruffled Tommy's hair, a wave of pride swelling within him. "It went better than I ever imagined." "They're listening." The sincerity of his words resonated. He was no longer just an observer in his own life, he had become a leader capable of shaking the very pillars that once loomed high and intimidating above him, successfully turning obstacles into milestones of achievement. As he settled down for the night, Jake realized his transformation transcended beyond professional duties. It was deeply personal. He had proven that legacy isn't built on titles but forged in the willingness to advocate for change, to inspire hope. The storms of yesterday had given way to clearer skies, with the comfort of knowing he had solidified a path not only for himself but for his son as well, inspiring Tommy to face his own challenges head-on. This journey of self-discovery and achievement was far from over. It had only just begun. For anyone reading this, it's time to embrace your own potential. The call to action is here. You need to subscribe now to ensure you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories that inspire transformation. Leave a like now to support our channel and feed the algorithm that fuels these vital discussions. Comment your reflections and theories about Jake's journey. What would you do in his shoes? And share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who crave stories of personal overcoming, igniting change in their lives too. Don't wait even one more second to jump on this mission for inspiration.